The Exact Science of Matrimony by O. Henry. As I have told you before, said Jeff Peters, I never had much confidence in the perfidiousness of woman. As partners or co-educators in the most innocent line of graft, they are not trustworthy. They deserve the compliment, said I. I think they're entitled to be called the honest sex. Why shouldn't they be? Said Jeff. They've got the other sex either grafting or working overtime for 'em. They're all right in business until they get their emotions or their hair touched up too much. Then you want to have a flat-footed, heavy-breathing man with sandy whiskers, 5 kids and a building and loan mortgage ready as an understudy to take her desk. Now there was that widow lady that me and Andy Tucker engaged to help us in that little matrimonial agency scheme we floated out in Cairo. When you've got enough advertising capital, say a roll as big as the little end of a wagon tongue, there's money in matrimonial agencies. We had about $6,000 and expected to double it in 2 months, which is about as long as a scheme like ours can be carried on without taking out a New Jersey charter. We fixed up an advertisement that read about like this: charming widow, beautiful, home-loving, 32 years, possessing $3,000 cash and owning valuable country property, would remarry. Would prefer a poor man with affectionate disposition to one with means, as she realizes that the solid virtues are oftenest to be found in the humble walks of life. No objection to elderly man or one of homely appearance if faithful and true and competent to manage property and invest money with judgment. Address with particulars, Lonely, care of Peters and Tucker, agents, Cairo, Ill. So far, so pernicious, says I, when we had finished the literary concoction. And now, says I, where's the lady? Andy gives me one of his looks of calm irritation. Jeff, says he, I thought you had lost them ideas of realism in your art. Why should there be a lady? When they sell a lot of watered stock on Wall Street, would you expect to find a mermaid in it? What has a matrimonial ad got to do with a lady? Now listen, says I, you know my rule, Andy, that in all my illegitimate inroads against the legal letter of the law, the article sold must be existent, visible, producible. In that way, and by a careful study of city ordinances and train schedules, I have kept out of all trouble with the police that a $5 bill and a cigar could not square. Now, to work this scheme, we've got to be able to produce bodily a charming widow, or its equivalent with or without the beauty, hereditaments and appurtenances set forth in the catalogue and writ of errors, or hereafter be held by a justice of peace. Well, says Andy, reconstructing his mind, maybe it would be safer in case the Post Office or the Peace Commission should try to investigate our agency. But where, he says, could you hope to find a widow who would waste time on a matrimonial scheme that had no matrimony in it? I told Andy that I thought I knew of the exact party. An old friend of mine, Zeke Trotter, who used to draw soda water and teeth in a tent show, had made his wife a widow a year ago by drinking some dyspepsia cure of the old doctor's instead of the lineament that he always got boozed up on. I used to stop at their house often, and I thought we'd get her to work with us. 'Twas only 60 miles to the little town where she lived, so I jumped out on the IC and finds her in the same cottage with the same sunflowers and roosters standing on the wash-tubs. Mrs. Trotter fitted our ad first-rate, except maybe for beauty and age and property valuation. But she looked feasible and praiseworthy to the eye, and it was a kindness to Zeke's memory to give her the job. Is this an honest deal you are putting on, Mr. Peters? She asks me when I tell her what we want. Mrs. Trotter, says I, "Andy Trotter and me have computed the calculation that 3,000 men in this broad and fair country will endeavor to secure your fair hand and ostensible money and property through our advertisement. Out of that number, something like 300 will expect to give you in exchange, if they should win you, the carcass of a lazy and mercenary loafer, a failure in life, a swindler and contemptible fortune-seeker. Me and Andy," says I, "proposed to teach these prayers on society a lesson. It was with difficulty," says I, "that me and Andy could refrain from forming a corporation under the title of the Great Moral and Millennial Malevolent Matrimonial Agency. Does that satisfy you?" "It does, Mr. Peters," she says. "I might have known you wouldn't have gone into anything that wasn't opprobrious. But what will my duties be? Do I have to reject personally these 3,000 ramscallions you speak of, or can I throw them out in bunches?" "Your job, Mrs. Trotter," says I, "will be practically a cynosure. You will live at a quiet hotel and will have no work to do. Andy and I will attend to all the correspondence and business end of it. Of course," says I, "some of the more ardent and impetuous suitors, who can raise the railroad fare, may come to Cairo to personally press their suit, or whatever fraction of a suit they may be wearing. In that case, you will be probably put to the inconvenience of kicking them out face to face. We will pay you $25 per week and hotel expenses." "Give me 5 minutes," says Mrs. Trotter, "to get my powder rag and leave the front door key to a neighbor, and you can let my salary begin." So I conveys Mrs. Trotter to Cairo and establishes her in a family hotel far enough away from mine and Andy's quarters to be unsuspicious and available. And I tell Andy. "Great," says Andy, "and now that your conscience is appeased to the tangibility and proximity of the bait, and leaving mutton aside, suppose we revenue a new fish." So we began to insert our advertisement in newspapers covering the country far and wide. One ad was all we used. We couldn't have used more without hiring so many clerks and Marcel paraphernalia that the sound of the gum chewing would have disturbed the Postmaster General. We placed $2,000 in a bank to Mrs. Trotter's credit and gave her the book to show in case anybody might question the honesty and good faith of the agency. I knew Mrs. Trotter was square and reliable, and it was safe to leave it in her name. With that one ad, Andy and me put in 12 hours a day answering letters. About 100 a day was what came in. I never knew there were so many large-hearted but indigent men in the country who were willing to acquire a charming widow and assume the burden of investing her money. Most of them admitted that they ran principally to whiskers and lost jobs and were misunderstood by the world, but all of them were sure that they were so chock-full of affection and manly qualities that the widow would be making the bargain of her life to get them. Every applicant got a reply from Peters and Tucker informing him that the widow had been deeply impressed by his straightforward and interesting letter, and requesting them to write again, stating more particulars and enclosing photograph if convenient. Peters and Tucker also informed the applicant that their fee for handing over the second letter to their fair client would be $2, enclosed therewith. So there you see the simple beauty of the scheme. 90% of them domestic foreign noblemen raised the price somehow and sent it in. That was all there was to it, except that me and Andy complained an amount about being put to the trouble of slicing open them envelopes and taking the money out. Some few clients called in person. We sent them to Mrs. Trotter, and she did the rest, except for 3 or 4 who came back to strike us for car fare. After the letters began to get in from the RFD districts, Andy and me were taking in about $200 a day. One afternoon, when we were busiest, and I was stuffing the 2s and 1s into cigar boxes, and Andy was whistling "No Wedding Bells for Her," a small, slick man drops in and runs his eye over the walls like he's on the trail of a lost Gainsborough painting or two. As soon as I saw him, I felt a glow of pride because we were running our business on the level. "I see you have quite a large mail today," says the man. I reached and got my hat. "Come on," says I. "We've been expecting you. I'll show you the goods. How was Teddy when you left Washington?" I took him down to the Riverview Hotel and had him shake hands with Mrs. Trotter. Then I showed her bank book with the $2,000 to her credit. "It seems to be all right," says he. "It is," says I, "and if you're not a married man, I'll leave you to talk a while with the lady. We won't mention the $2. "Thanks," says he. "If I wasn't, I might. Good day, Mr. Peters." Toward the end of 3 months we had taken in something over $5,000, and we saw it was time to quit. We had a good many complaints made to us, and Mrs. Trotter seemed to be tired of the job. A good